Hi there everyone, this is Marnie Moon, and ever since I made my first ever flower arrangement last time, I became really ambitious and found a big vase that I had gotten from IKEA years ago and decided to make a big arrangement. And it turns out flower arranging in a bigger vase is a lot more difficult than I thought. So I made a list of do's and don'ts for flower arranging that I had created from the first flower arrangement, and I added to that list from making the second flower arrangement. And here it is, the do's and don'ts of flower arranging from a noob. Number one, don't be hangry while flower arranging. When I was flower arranging for the first time, I accidentally just had a really good meal beforehand. So the whole experience was peaceful and calm, and even when I had challenges or things I couldn't figure out, my mind stayed in a very tranquil stage. And then during the second arrangement, I had tried a cup of cactus soup, which was great, and that was the only thing I ate beforehand. The flower arrangement was so much bigger, it felt so challenging, and I felt so frustrated when I couldn't figure things out. I think a lot of the frustrations I felt was hangriness instead. So don't be hangry. Instead, do look at images and videos of different styles of floral arrangements. I think this is helpful in general, but especially for people like me, I find that I'm good at following instructions usually, but when it comes to things like design and things that feel creative, I am incapable of following instructions or remembering the principles of design. I just am resorting to putting flowers together intuitively every single time. So I think if my mind has memories of seeing many beautiful designs, then subconsciously, when I do them myself, I will also be able to have beautiful ideas. Number two, don't forget about the extra lazy Susans that you might have laying around in the house. I saw this from a professional flower arranger. They were using it to turn the vase around so that you can look at it from different angles while arranging. So helpful. The ones I had were too wobbly, so they didn't work, but I'll figure it out in the future. Instead, do feel free to forget about frogs or wires to keep the flowers in place sometimes, because when I did the first arrangement, the fillers themselves were more than sufficient to keep all the flowers in place, and I found that professional floral arrangers do it too. However, when it comes to a bigger arrangement, this is more difficult. So, frogs or pins or other tools like tapes to keep the stems in place can be useful sometimes too. And number three, don't go to a store to purchase the flowers or the plants I want first, and then afterwards find free plants in the yard or wherever. Instead, find the free plants first, and then for the last step, go to the store to buy something. I think this might be unimportant for people who have a much bigger budget, but for me, who is trying to create an arrangement with as much free flowers or plants as possible and just buying a few things, it makes a huge difference, because for my first arrangement, I was getting the free plants first, and I was very excited and happy when I was finding the free leaves and foliage in my yard, and I was able to get a lot of them. And then when I went to the store, I didn't feel like I still needed a lot. I felt like I could just buy a few things and it would be enough. And this was great on my wallet, and it turned out really well when I did the arrangement. But the second time I did an arrangement, I just happened to go to the store first because I was afraid it would close. And because the store had such a big, nice arrangement of curated flowers and fillers that all looked really amazing, I wanted to buy everything. And I ended up, I think, spending more money there than I would have if I visited the store as a last step in collecting the flowers and plants that I need. And after I left the store, I went to a yard to find free plants and fillers second. And because I was just so stimulated by the store, the process of finding free plants didn't feel as exciting and as fun. So I think in the future, I will always try to find the free plants first so that I maintain that excitement, and then visit the store to buy something as the last step of collecting flowers. And my number 3 do would be to try new places to find flowers. The first time I went to my own yard, I went to a local grocery store, and the second time I went to a neighbor's yard who gave me permission, and I visited a farther store, and it was very exciting because the farther store had such a bigger and better selection, and my neighbor's yard also had a better selection than my yard did. So there are still other places I could try in the future, like the farmer's market. I remember they used to have vendors who sold bouquets, and also just different places I can walk and collect wildflowers. So that's part of the excitement of doing floral arrangements. Number 4 I wrote down is to not make an arrangement without learning the names of each piece that goes in it. And this is mainly for me, who feels like if I'm going to really get into flower arranging, I should become more knowledgeable, at least learn more names of flowers. And it's always amazing when I see other floral arrangers picking up every single piece and the names just roll off their tongue. I didn't do that quite as well for the second arrangement. I think I was just in a hurry for some reason, being afraid I won't finish it, or being afraid all the flowers will wilt before I can put them in an arrangement. I did learn of my focal flower this time, so I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about the names than last time, but I think I could do more and learn the names of each piece. And the number 4 do, I wanted to find true droopy pieces, something that softly falls over the edge of the vase for my next arrangement. I always think they look really pretty, and I attempted to find them for my first arrangement. So I found a droopy plant in my yard, and turns out it didn't look good in a vase, and also the scale was off. It only looked droopy when it was in the huge yard, and as soon as I put it in a vase, it was not droopy at all. So I wanted to find a true droopy stem for the next arrangement, and I was still not able to find it. So I think this is something I will look for in the future, and it might prove to be something that is harder to find than I expected. Number 5, if during your first floor arrangement or first few, you already found an element that you fell in love with, do continue with that element. What I found during my first floor arrangement was that I really loved the tall spear-like pieces, which was the purple piece in the first arrangement. So when I saw these birds of paradise, I fell in love again. And I knew that it was going to be the focal flower of my second arrangement. And this is my personal preference. Your preference may be the really rounded, the soft bouquets. You may prefer a specific color. I think because we are not professionals and perhaps we want to explore if we truly love floral arranging. I think it is easier to start and run off with elements that we love, and it doesn't interfere with us trying the different types of flowers and stems out there. And the number 5 don't get clippings from the super thin and soft plants. They will wilt in minutes and not last. So if you're only getting plants from the store, then this is not an issue because all the flowers and filler plants in the store are meant to be placed in a floral arrangement and sold. However, if you're like me, getting some plants from your own yard or somewhere else on the side of the road for free, I found that for the plants that looks really cute, a lot of them, if they're way too thin and soft, that they droop immediately. They're wilting just a few minutes after I clip them, even if I immediately put them in water. So I end up not liking how they look once I start making an arrangement. So look for wild plants when you're collecting them that has a slightly more substantial stem. Number 6, don't get touched anywhere by poison ivy. This is a regionalized problem, but in North America, poison ivy is a huge pain. And I'm going to go on a tangent again. Apparently, people used to love the poison ivy plant. They loved its color, they loved its shape. They would plant them intentionally in their gardens, grow them, sell them, bring them to gardens all around the world, and the entire time they knew that these plants were poisonous. I have no idea what they were thinking because these plants are so invasive and they grow everywhere. And as soon as you touch them, you will start to itch like crazy. And you have to wash it off with soap and water. And apparently there is another plant whose juice counteracts the poison effects of poison ivy, but it's just a pain. And I thought that my yard didn't have poison ivy for the longest time, but this year I found that they actually do exist in my yard, and they exist in my neighbor's yard. I think it at least touched my watering can, so I had to wash that item off, and I kept phantom itching too because I was so worried that my skin touched the poison ivy too. Just horrible. So please, if you are searching for clippings in your own yard, do not forget that poison ivy is everywhere. And the number 6, do continue getting more, especially more fillers, than I think I will need, because I'll probably use trial and error later once I sit down to do the arrangement to see what I can actually use. And this worked out really well with my first arrangement. It's related to the number 3 do, get the free stuff first. So I was getting the free fillers from my own yard and I was really excited, and I got way more than that tiny little vase could possibly contain. But I was super happy afterwards because I had more than enough fillers, even though many of the ones I got I ended up not using, and I didn't have to get out of making the arrangement to go out in the yard and get more fillers. However, on my second arrangement, I didn't take my own advice, and part of that is because I got the free fillers last, so I kind of felt like, oh, I already have so many flowers that I already bought, so I didn't feel like I got more than what I needed. I got about enough, which ended up being not actually enough when I made the arrangement. So I should have taken my own advice and gotten way more fillers, way more than I need. you will see that later on I ended up going outside to get more, which is not the end of the world, but it would be better if I just had everything and I could do the arrangement all in one sitting. Number 7, do continue trying, because starting is the most intimidating part. When I was doing the first floral arrangement, when I sat down, I thought it was never going to happen because I had no idea what to do. But I just kept putting random branches into the vase, and everything fell into place afterwards. So do not be afraid, and if you want to do flower arranging, as soon as you get past the start, things will flow. And the number 7 don't is related, and that is don't panic if you are feeling lost after already making a good flower arrangement and thinking, oh, I got this. And then when you sit down, I'm describing myself. So I was intimidated at first, but after the first arrangement, I was really confident, and I expected my second arrangement to be a lot easier. But when I sat down for my second flower arrangement, it felt the same. Making just a few arrangements, at least for me, is not enough for that panic to disappear when I first sit down. I will always feel lost for quite a while, I think, when I first sat down. But I remembered to just get through the first part and started putting random branches in, and it worked out again. So do continue trying, do start, and don't panic if after making 1 or 2 arrangements that beginning panic still exists. And number 8, do feel free to cut foliage. Of course, we all cut the stems to different lengths and at a diagonal angle. However, at first I felt like perhaps I shouldn't cut the foliage, but I tried it out this time because the edges were brown and they just didn't look good. And it turns out if you just cut a little bit and try to maintain a good shape, it does not look bad. I would try to not overdo this in the future because we all like the natural shapes of the leaves, but if it needs to be done, it's not a big deal to do it. And the number 8 don't is don't make the flowers with an ugly back, the tall pieces. Use them low so their backs are easily hidden. And with this current arrangement, it's not as much of an issue because both the bird of paradise and the calla lilies are flowers who look good 360 around. However, last time when I had the chrysanthemums, some of the chrysanthemums had a really pretty front, and the backs were not ugly, they just didn't look as good as the fronts. And I should have picked the ones that had a unimpressive back to sit low instead. And I guess this is another thing to think about when picking the flowers. There are some flowers where you don't have to worry about the back, and there are some flowers where you will know that when making the arrangement you have to be careful to hide the back because you don't want to see it. And number 9, don't use a glass vase or a see-through vase when you can. I'm not sure why in the store most of the vases being sold are glass ones, when in reality the non-see-through vases are so much easier and makes flower arranging so much simpler, because then you don't have to worry about the stems looking messy or worry about once they start deteriorating if they will look bad, or how to hide the vase with a leaf. It's just so much easier with a non-see-through vase like the one I used the first time. I can imagine there are some occurrences where you manage to make the stems inside the vase look really pretty as well as the flowers outside of the vase. but I think very few flower arrangements turn out like that. Most of the time, just use a non-see-through vase. And the number 9 do is to make an arrangement in 2 days instead of 1 day. This advice may be just for myself and may not apply to everyone, and may not even be a good idea to another flower arranger. For my first and second flower arrangement, I did them in 1 day. And for the first one, I don't think that was bad because the vase was very small, so I was able to do it in 1 day without stress. But for the second one, I definitely felt a little bit stressed. The reason I was so eager to do all of them in 1 day is, one, because I was inexperienced and I was worried that the clippings would wilt if I don't do them in 1 day, and now I know that is not the case. And logically, it makes sense because once you finish an arrangement, you do expect to enjoy it for several days. So they're not gonna all wilt within a day or two. So it's okay to collect the flowers and the fillers on day 1 and sit down and do the arrangement perhaps in day 2. Another reason I was so eager to do them in 1 day is because I'm always afraid of not finishing something, and this fear comes from my own past history. I have a tendency of wanting to do something that I really like but never end up doing it, or just doing the first step. For example, just buying the materials needed to do a craft and never sitting down to do the craft, or just filming something to make a video and never finish through with the editing. And it has happened so much in the past that I have trained myself to be afraid of myself, to be afraid of not finishing anything that I actually want to do, that I actually would enjoy doing. And out of that fear, when I was making the flower arrangements, even if I can see that it's getting dark, I'm getting tired and hungry, I would still insist on finishing the arrangement on that day. So now that I've already done 2, I guess I can tell myself, you are capable of finishing what you started. You've already done it. And you even followed through on making a video afterwards. So there's no need to keep stressing about finishing it in a single day, because I trust myself that even if I take 2 days, I'll also be able to finish it. The number 10 do's and don'ts have to do with the stability of the vase. So number 10 don't use flowers that are way too tall for the vase. Earlier I had said I really enjoy the tall pieces that bring your eye up more than arrangements where everything is rounded, and I still do, but there is a limit I found, especially when it comes to keeping the vase stable. And when the stem is too tall, it just ends up being too heavy. And there were several times where when I was doing the second arrangement, the vase almost toppled over, either when I'm messing with the tall stems or any other stems, just because it was unstable. So I strongly suggest watching the length still, and if you do get a really tall stem, all you have to do is cut it shorter. I have read somewhere to keep the height maybe 2.5 or below of the height of the vase. I don't really do it all that exact for myself, but that is a reference. And the number 10 do is to put water in the vase before you start flower arranging. I did that for my first arrangement, and the water spilled over because I wasn't very careful, so I thought, oh, maybe it would be easier if I just start with an empty vase. And that was a bad idea because I think water adds a lot of weight to the base of the arrangement. Even when you watch the height of the flowers and you watch their heaviness, if the base is just too light and it becomes top heavy, the arrangement becomes unstable, and it would be very frustrating to have it shatter or topple over while you're trying to do something that is relaxing and beautiful. So add water first. Number 11, don't wait until the arrangement is super full to add the big flowers because they might get squished. And conversely, don't add the focal flowers too early when there is not enough fillers in the vase yet. I think the bigger the vase, the easier it is to make the latter mistake of adding the focal flowers too early without enough fillers. And the smaller the vase, the easier it is to make the first mistake of adding the focal flowers too late. That is my experience. I tend to err on the side of adding more fillers because plants are soft and to a certain extent malleable. So even if the fillers look full, a little bit of squeezing is okay, and that pressure helps to stabilize the focal flower. And you can see with this arrangement, my vase was too empty. Adding the focal flower so early made it really difficult for me to keep the focal flowers, especially the heavy birds of paradise, in place. And the number 11, do start your first arrangement with a smaller vase if you can. I think this was mentioned as a part of many other do's and don'ts, and that is using a smaller vase is just easier. It's less stressful, it's less likely to be unstable, and it has a higher chance of success, which will increase your confidence in doing arrangements. And they don't look any less pretty. And number 12, once the arrangement is finished, don't put it next to a window or anywhere there is a lot of sunlight, because sunlight makes a plant grow well, and with live plants, so this means they grow bigger perhaps, but with cut flowers, they make them grow older and age faster. So put it somewhere away from the sunlight. And the number 12, and it's the final one, do make an arrangement for someone else, for someone you love, for someone you want to give a gift to. Everyone I've gifted a bouquet have liked it. People like flowers, and it gives the arrangement a little bit more meaning, I think. And that is all the advice I could muster up. 12 do's and 12 don'ts of floral arranging from a noob. I think this could be a useful perspective compared to the seasoned floral arranger who might no longer be making any of the mistakes that I was making. Please enjoy, and I do have a secret number 13, which is to create a Instagram account for all the floral arrangements that I would make, and I'd like to keep making them. It is Marnie Floral, just for the floral arrangements. Not going to post things like the anchovy pizza experience on there. Thank you so much. Good night.